Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming this month to the July Spokane Homeless Coalition. You've made it. You've made it another month. We are here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Robert. I'm one of the leadership members with the Spokane Homeless Coalition. We meet every first Thursday of the month, and this is July. We have a nice, some of us may have had a nice long weekend, some may have not, which is a bummer, I'm sorry. But you are here, and you have a smile on your face, and it's good to see everyone. Okay, so the Spokane Homeless Coalition, for those of you, if this is your first time, is basically an educational platform. An opportunity for networking, sharing of resources, and I'm joined by some of my other leadership leadership members. Whoa. I was gonna say Barry, but leadership and Barry formed at once in my mind and came out. So Barry, Rob, Julie, Christy are all leadership members on the Spokane Homeless Coalition. We do our best to make agendas that are packed with information of things that are happening in our community and in our system, things that are affecting our system. And for those of you who also don't know, part of my role in the community is I serve at Providence Community Clinic on the corner of 2nd and Brown. We serve those who are in transit, walking by on the street. They come in and we serve whatever need that they have to the best of our ability. And I love giving a reflection based off of Providence mission to be expression of God's healing love, witness through the ministry of Jesus, steadfast in serving all, especially those who are poor and vulnerable, is the mission of Providence. Only this month I don't have a reflection, because we have a lot on the agenda to go over. And the first person up this month is that we have Arielle Anderson with us. Arielle, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, where you work, where you're from, and what was your first job out of high school?
Sure. Okay, so my name is Arielle Anderson. Right now I am the Director of Housing Assistance Programs at the Spokane Housing Authority. And prior to that I was working in the homeless field as primarily a direct service worker for 6 or 7 years. So there's a lot of people here that I know and that I'm familiar with. But it's just it's so nice to be in a whole room of helpers, and that is the motivation and the purpose of why we're all here together. So let's see, where am I from? I am a Spokaneite. There's this ongoing war between my father and I. I say I'm a 5th generation Spokaneite. He says 4th, so whatever. Somewhere in there, there's a compromise to be had. My first gig, so what I will say, I'm going to say this, is that when I turned 16, my dad drove me down to the Taco Bell downtown and said, you are now going to be working officially, and so that was my first official job, was at Taco Bell, but prior to that I babysat and, had a paper route. He was a steadfast Catholic, and that work ethic was certainly instilled in me at a very early age, so.
Nice. Thank you very much for a bit about yourself. For those of you who are interested, my first job was at Northern Quest Casino as a valet partner. I parked cars. Some cars were a little bit too small to get into. Okay, anyway, about the meat of what's going on. Permanent supportive housing has been kind of the main resource, or one of the main resources for housing. Can you kind of give a general overview of how access to permanent supportive housing, coordinating entry system works, and changes that have happened?
Sure. So, yeah, I won't get into the weeds, otherwise I'd be here all day. But under the coordinated entry umbrella, there were several different access points that folks could go into that were experiencing homelessness. So that hasn't changed, right? I think what has changed is that intervention, when we talk about permanent supportive housing, no longer is housed under that umbrella. And so not all of it, right? So I do want to put a little caveat there that there is still permanent supportive housing referrals that the various entry points can make on behalf of the folks that are working with, but it's a much smaller percentage now. So I know this is going to shock everybody, but there was some conflicting interpretations from HUD as it related to various federal regulations. I know, everybody is shocked. And so basically what that boiled down to was we could no longer, for those units that the Spokane Housing Authority project-based voucher, so think about a Section 8 voucher, but that actually sticks with the unit, okay? That those could no longer go through coordinated entry. So what the Housing Authority had to do fairly quickly was pivot and create wait lists for these permanent supportive housing units. And those projects are generally through Catholic Charities and Volunteers of America, but we do have some, Community Frameworks also has a couple of projects, Transitions also, and I will say I've left a couple of applications on this little table here. You can access that through our website too, so you can actually see what projects it is that folks are, potentially going to vie for. So the only real difference here, which arguably could be fairly significant, is that we are no longer using the SPDAT. I know you said no acronyms, but it is too early and I haven't had enough coffee. So suffice to say, we are not using this tool anymore to prioritize folks. So that would be part of the reason why they would kind of percolate to the top when a report would be ran. And then that would connect them to a particular permanent supportive housing project. We are still prioritizing, I want to make this very clear, chronic individuals, okay? So those folks that say, yes, I am chronic, which requires a certain length of homelessness and a disability, a verifiable disability, okay? Being on ABD by itself, just FYI, does not verify disability. That we will, at the Housing Authority, prioritize those folks. Let's say that we got through all the chronic individuals, which I assure you we will not, but let's pretend that we did. Then we would go down to homeless, just straight homeless individuals, okay? So I think the biggest takeaway is that that acuity level no longer is a factor in how we connect individuals to those permanent supportive housing units. So the good side of that, and I'm always going to look at the positive to some extent, is that no longer, we hope, right? I think in another 9 months, maybe another 12 months, we'll be able to tell, there'll be enough time that has passed, that we'll be able to pull the data from these various projects and see, how's your attrition rate, right? How are people overall doing health-wise, right? Because the idea would be that we're not concentrating high acuity folk into one particular apartment complex, right? Because you're getting a whole spectrum of people, which is good, right? I mean, that's kind of the point of a neighborhood, is that you've got, in my mind, that's what makes a neighborhood good, is that you've got a whole bunch of different folk from different walks of life, and they can all support each other. I mean, that's the idea of community. And so I think it's a little too early to tell what kind of an impact that will have, but I am going to make an assumption that it's going to be positive. So
it sounds like it's a transition from scoring system to a wait list.
That's correct.
So now that there's no scoring system, what's used for that prioritization?
Yeah, first come, first serve, right? So that's really what it comes down to. And it also opens up, right? So for all those providers out here that have wanted to be a satellite site for either the single system, soon to be a youth system, family system, that means that you can actually assist individuals that present to you, and that's an option, right? You can fill out that application without having to actually call up SNAP or call up another satellite site or get your HFCA, that Homeless Families Coordinated Entry, and get an appointment or whatever, right? So it actually is more accessible for individuals. Keep in mind though that if you are a helper and you're on the front lines assisting folks with those applications, make sure that they meet that chronic status, okay? So that's not going to change. They're still going to have to prove up their chronicity. The other thing is absolutely photo ID, social security card, still needed. That's never changed. You absolutely need those items. So, and that will be a reason for denial. And I just very quickly want to say that the only things that we have worked very hard over the last almost 2 years now at the Spokane Housing Authority with the leadership of Pam Parr and Lori McGowan, the deputy director, to reduce the barriers on the Housing Authority side. So we only screen out for 2 reasons, okay? And these are HUD requirements, which is lifetime sex offender registry, and then manufacturing of methamphetamines on a publicly funded housing. Or you have to wait, there are some instances where if you've gotten evicted while you're on a housing voucher, and then you gotta wait a little bit of time. But again, those are all federal, okay? So there's nothing that the Housing Authority is doing with our own regulations that would otherwise prevent folks from getting a voucher. I'm of the opinion that we ought to give, you want a voucher, that's fine, right? If you have a number of evictions or you have a long criminal record, you've got to work, hopefully with your helper, right, to kind of help mitigate that when you're talking to a landlord. But we are not going to be a reason for folks not to have that voucher in hand and give them an opportunity to succeed. So,
can people time out of that wait list?
Well, we'll do a purge. It's called a purge. The one thing is that PSH wait list is always open. It's a perpetually open list. Now, we may end up regretting that, and so I'll take a look probably in December of this year, see how many folks are in that pool, and then what we do is we'll do a purge, which means that we're going to reach out to every single person that's in that waiting pool, and make sure that they still are, wanting housing. Maybe they've already been housed, maybe they, we can't contact them. So, but we'll give a heads up to the community before that happens. We always do a 10-day notice, letting the public know. So.
And when someone's name does come up off that list, what's the efforts reaching out to them?
Yeah. So it's a lot like what coordinated entry does, right? So there's a spot on that application that if you're working with somebody and you're helping them shepherd them through this process, put your name down, right? Put your email down. Because we will CC you, we will reach out to you and let you know that individual's name has come up. And I think that's, of course, particularly true if folks don't even have a contact, right? We are going to be relying on whoever that worker is that may be helping them. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that too much has changed. We're not going to be, we're on a timeline too, right? So we only have so much time. For those of you that have CMIS access, I encourage you to upload documentation, the photo ID and the social security card. That makes our lives a bit easier. We do have that access at the Housing Authority. And that's just one less thing that the individual has to deal with once they fill out a packet.
And is there any acknowledgement when applications are received? Like, do the applications dropped off? Is there a letter or like a message sent out to the shepherd?
Yes.
That goes out to them?
Yes. That will be done via email. If you come in and physically drop it off, we'll make a stamped copy, usually just of the first page, letting you know that we've received it.
And is this still involved in the CMIS, that software you use? Is this still, or is this taken out of CMIS?
Yes, right now it's taken out of it. I think we are working with the city right now to try to see how we can still track that. But right now we've not come up with a ready solution. Keep in mind, it's only been a couple months, so there's still some bumps that we got to smooth out.
Want to open it up for a couple questions. Is there any questions out there for Arielle? Right here.
So the core document can just be uploaded in CMIS, or do they need to be attached to the application?
Question is, that's fine. Related to core documents, do they need to be uploaded to CMIS or attachments to the application?
So no, what you're filling out here is just a pre-application, right? It's a very simple, it's not even really a full page. And that's just to get them in the waiting pool. And we do that purposely, right? Because nobody in their right mind is gonna sit and fill out a 10-page application, right? So it's all very easy, it's very straightforward, and we require no documentation to get on our wait list. It's not until you're called up, then that's when it matters. So it mirrors coordinated entry in many ways in that regard.
Question?
Can the community members who are not working in services go to the Housing Authority building, get this application, and just turn it in?
Can community members, is the question, can community members, just anyone, volunteer, anyone, whoever, come in, get an application, help someone fill it out and turn it in on their behalf?
No, just my next door neighbor, anyone's allowed. Can they go down to Housing Authority or go online, get that short application, and get on the list?
Fill out the application.
Yeah, so keep in mind, this is not for a voucher, so I'm gonna be very
Well,
clear. Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
Any other questions? Right here.
Some programs in the community have vouchers attached to them, some don't. So what is the likelihood of all programs in the community that provide housing services having access to the vouchers, maybe like 1 or 2 a month, that they can give their sheet?
So, the question is can you rephrase that one more time? Is how can all of homeless service providers who provide housing resources have one uniform application?
Because some have access to vouchers right now, but some don't. So what is the likelihood that all programs that provide housing services can have access or have 1 or 2 vouchers available to them?
Yeah, so let me rephrase that. So right now we have a referral voucher program through the Spokane Housing Authority where we have standing memorandums of understanding with various providers. And that includes Frontier Behavioral Health, it includes Catholic Charities, Revive, et cetera, et cetera. So there's about 16 organizations that we do this with. And I will say too that this was the first time Spokane was kind of at the center stage for that. And again, that was a brainchild of Pam Parr, the executive director. Now, the likelihood of attaching vouchers to every single service provider is about 0, okay? Because there's only so much money that we have to go around. And that unfortunately translates into, vouchers, right? What I will say is that for those individuals that are in a project-based voucher unit for a year, right, and they've got, they're paying their rent for 12 months and, everything is good, after 12 months, they can request a housing choice voucher or a Section 8 voucher at the end of that 12 months. So that is another pathway. We just got done putting out the RFP for the referral voucher program where we scooped up hopefully a couple new providers. that have never had access to vouchers before. And we might do that again next year too. So just keep your eye out. Follow us on social media because that's where we put all this stuff out. So if you're a provider, you want vouchers, look for that next June. We should be putting out the RFP again.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Arielle. Any closing comments?
Nothing profound, no?
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us this month.
Thank you.
And for that update. All right. Julie Garcia is going to give us an update on, well, not really, an update on what's going on with Camp Hope, learned experience, the whole kit and caboodle. Okay. Oh, nice. Should we grab an extra chair?
Yeah, I don't want to lose.
Oh, yeah. No one likes
No one
ballooning.
likes moving.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Well, done a couple drive-bys and everything kind of seems cleared up on, flip that up. Or up. There you go. Everything seems cleared up. It seems like a year has passed, a year and a half-ish. Can you give us kind of a brief overview of how everything happened and just kind of, what you've learned from this whole process of Camp Hope?
Well, Camp Hope is closed, so that's the start. And we're just going to give you a brief overview of how Camp Hope started and what we're continuing to do in the community. We have some slides.
The power on?
The power is not on.
I think the laptop has to be over.
Today, Rob to the rescue.
Thank you. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yep, we're good. Front bit over.
Okay, we're calling this Beyond Camp Hope, Homelessness in Spokane.
Yep.
Our next slide is the point in time count numbers for 2021, 2022, and 2023. On the same slide is the population of Camp Hope during those exact times. Keep in mind that in 2021, we didn't do an unsheltered count, so those numbers are going to be off from the remainder of the numbers.
So the bottom sort of V is Camp Hope. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The bottom V is Camp Hope. The weird little line in there is the unsheltered homeless, which is why you don't see any numbers for 2021. And then the sheltered homeless, and you can see that big jump in 2023, which is the Trent shelter and the Row Project, like Catalyst and Revive and Cat transitional houses. So you can see that we sheltered more folks, but we still have a lot of folks that are unsheltered.
We broke the city's data down into the demographics. Mostly what we wanted to show is that the most need in our community is unsheltered individuals. One of the slides on here, you're going to see the demographics. Yep. And on that demographics, what we want to highlight is the number that's increasing most rapidly is that 55 to 64 category in homeless services. People are getting unable to pay their rent. Rents are increasing. People on Social Security no longer have enough money to pay the rent that is being raised to. So we're seeing a gigantic increase in the elderly population.
And this is just kind of a visual to show the bottom purple again is Camp Hope, and the middle is our housing inventory. And I just, from the city, I just counted the transitional housing and emergency housing, so I did not, what Arielle was talking about with the PSH, because those units are not readily open, they stay pretty full. I did not include them in here, so what we're looking at is the full, all of the individuals that were counted in the point in time count in that pink area. That's kind of our gap. Does that make sense? Okay.
And this is just a breakdown of those numbers.
These are from the city. These are from the city CMIS, so thank you, Amanda, for getting us these numbers. So you can see the PSH, rapid rehousing, and other PH in that inventory, which folks do have access to, but one of the numbers that we would want, but we don't have today, is what is the retention rate for PSH? How many people are moving out? So what's really open for people to fill? The same thing goes for the other PH. And then rapid rehousing, that's our full inventory, but like how is that a yearly, like how are we doing that? Those are some questions that we had on the housing inventory count.
This represents October of 2022, when we badged all members of Camp Hope. 467 out of the 689 that we had originally counted badged in at Camp Hope. And the second part of the slide is how many people were moved into better situations with the whole population.
Well, so the bottom part, the 85% is who's from Spokane. Just wanting to make sure. Yep, and then the second one, what Julie said.
And 159 people were employed during the duration of camp, and 219 were moved into better housing options. These were the row units that were created by the Department of Commerce funding. And these don't include, so on 2023 is what we have in CMIS right now. What is coming soon is row funded housing options that we have not put into CMIS yet. These are the limitations of this data. The point in time count was done on one day in January. Not all housing and homeless providers report data to CMIS. Jules Helping Hands has greenhouses. We don't report our numbers into the CMIS system. UGM has housing options. They don't report into the CMIS system. So these are why we wanted to disclaim there's more units than we think, but they're just not reported. Our top 6 lessons learned at Camp Hope. So this represents all of them. First of all, a large number of people in any neighborhood creates a gigantic impact. We want to stress that. We realized that there was an impact on the community in which we were housing these folks in. Collaborating services was the key to success. Collaborating is very hard, especially for organizations on the ground that have been working outside of the system for so very long. It's very hard to create a space where those folks trust the system that we're creating. It's all about systems. So whether or not you trust one or you trust the other, it's very hard to collaborate. We're all working towards the same funding. And I think this is where some of that regional homeless entity will help, is we're not pitting one's provider against the other. Everybody doesn't have to be everything. We can all stay in the lanes that we're really good at. We learned that structure and consistency helped people participate. It was rough at first to put the rules down. These are what the rules are that we're gonna need. But as soon as people started to adhere to the rules and get some structure, that's when everybody started participating. There was a level of safety and security at Camp Hope once the fence came up and people were badged and people knew what was coming and what wasn't coming. It wasn't just everybody doing whatever they like at any given time. So that's supposed to say lived experience peers, not P's.
I had some editing difficulties.
We thought that'd be a little funny for you guys. But the lived experience and peers were the real experts in the room at Camp Hope. It wasn't the heads of these organizations. We collaborated together to bring our service providers closer. The peers, the lived experience folks that were on the ground every day at the camp are the folks that made the difference. Homelessness does not end when they're at a site. We're learning this slowly as a community, that we can put people into buildings all day long. And it's super expensive, but it doesn't end homelessness. Homelessness is only ended when somebody receives a home. And once they receive a home, some of our folks still need to have services provided regularly. For our Camp Hopers, we're providing those services for the next 3 years. And then one of the last things that was so important to closing Camp Hope was a navigation center. We utilized an access tent across the street from Camp Hope. That really was the key to getting people to come in and participate, bringing services to them. We were able to provide healthcare clinics and healthcare access, insurance access, access for other service providers outside of road-funded agencies to just have a space to meet with their client. They were no longer having to walk around town hunting them down. They had one access point where everybody went to, and that was the key to being able to decommission Camp Hope. As road-funded agencies, this is what we believe is needed in our community to continue this work with our chronically homeless, unsheltered folks. Navigation centers, peer services throughout the system, more housing for people to go to into a shelter, rental assistance to keep people in housing, well-funded services to keep people in housing, and more housing of all kinds, and a collaboration of service providers. Everybody does something really good in the community, and we need to be able to do those things collaboratively. Even though our belief system may be different, or how we work in our individual organizations, bringing all those things to the table so that our folks have more options. That's literally what they need, is options. When Jules didn't work for one of our clients, we were able to send them to Revive or to CAT, and other providers in the community were coming in, so we were able to utilize those folks because our folks don't have enough options. Jules Helping Hands doesn't work for everybody. CAT doesn't work for everybody. Revive doesn't work for everybody. What they need is the option to choose so that they'll participate in their own existence. I don't want to be told who I have to work with, because sometimes that doesn't work for me. I don't believe anybody else does, especially our folks who are already in trauma and struggling. It's those options that really mattered in being able to exit people from this camp. And we just wanted to make an acknowledgement here at the end and thank Amanda from the city of Spokane for all the data that was provided to us to be able to create these slides, and to Schlick, who doesn't, obviously, people don't know that they're part of this road-funded agency, but they are keepers of the data and the people that create the processes and policies that help us move forward as a team.
Quick question, I see people taking pictures of the screen. Is this PowerPoint going to be available?
Yeah, I can make it available.
So I
Should I
will-
just send it to you?
I will put it out on the coalition listserv the next day or two.
Yeah, let me edit
Yeah.
some of my misspelling.
We don't want the bigger community to think the P's are out there.
Thank you.
Well, Julie, I mean, it's amazing to see that over here. I just want to give you a round of applause real quick. I mean, incredible. I mean, for what was accomplished just over a year, right? I mean, yes, there's not a success story there's multiple success stories, but there's also circumstances that ultimately didn't work out. And just, going into this Q&A time, I'm gonna ask a selfish question because I'm a behavioralist. What behaviors did you see over that year from the people you work with, from the people you were serving? How did it change from that December when everyone marched over there to the last person?
So in December, when we first started at Camp Hope with nowhere for people to go, all the way until October of 2022, there was no money for Camp Hope. It was literally me, Kenny, and Maurice trying to keep people from killing each other on one lot. And we reached a peak in June and July of 2022 of 689 people. That, when we looked at that, it was very overwhelming. We did not know that there was a road funding initiative or that it would be possible to have money given to providers to provide services at Camp Hope. So once that money came on board and other service providers jumped in, and don't think that other service providers were not coming to camp before October, they were. It was just an overwhelming number of people experiencing homelessness. I mean, maybe if I would have known that 689 people would have come to one lot back in December of 2021, I may have reconsidered moving over to that lot. It grew fast, and we began to see that people had nowhere to go. This was a place that there was safety in numbers, and it wasn't perfect by any means. We learned a lot of lessons from this that we hope that can be implemented in how we do work in the future, but we collected a lot of data. And that's the amazing thing that Schlick has done through all of this, is that data that we've collected throughout Camp Hope's existence is a snapshot into homelessness in any city, any given time, in any encampment, and can be replicated, what we did there, in all of these struggling communities that don't know where to start in homeless services, because I'm gonna be real honest, we didn't know where to start either back in June and July of 2022. And moving forward, like you said, not everything was a success. Through all of the issues that we had at Camp Hope, whether we were having lawsuits or police or whatever the problems were, over 200 people left that camp without getting services. So what we're doing now is we're continuing on into the community to re-engage those folks and make those housing options available to that same population of badged individuals at Camp Hope.
Questions? Back in the very back.
Hi, I'm Amy from the now. Question, do you have any statistics of how many people came to Camp Hope from other communities, whether through the city or whatever? Because my impression of it was we brought this unit brought in a lot of other homeless individuals from other areas. Do we have any?
It says, I can't get back to
Any
the slide.
stats on that at all? That's all I'm curious about.
Yes, that first slide that I can't get back to that said 85%. 85% of those 467 individuals were from the greater Spokane area. That includes the Spokane Valley and Coeur d'Alene. So, but 85%. So like that's gone around, that story has gone around, and it is not accurate. Yeah, that's what I'll say. I don't know about the full 689 because we were not tracking data and we didn't have like a controlled site, but from the 467 people that we badged.
Hi, the causes that started Camp Hope, they're still out there. So what is the likelihood it's going to happen again this winter?
Well, we're currently in the exact same situation we were at the start of Camp Hope in our homeless service system in Spokane right now. 2 Fridays ago, there were 0 beds for women, 0 beds for men, except for low barrier beds in our entire community. So we're still exactly in the same boat, even though 200 plus people got housed. The likelihood is, I hope to never run a Camp Hope again, but we're service providers. So if a Camp Hope springs up right now, we know of 2 encampments over 100 people apiece in those encampments. If we do not do something as a community, different than we are currently doing right now. Encampments are going to be what we are going to see in our community. And these are encampments that don't have services provided to them. Camp Hope had funding specifically for Camp Hope. All of these other encampments do not have funding moving forward. So if we do not do something different than what we're doing now, this is our future services.
One more question, Robert says to me. Who's the questioner? Maybe nobody. Aha! I see one.
Definitely. Hi, my name is Zoe Helm. I'm with the City of Spokane. I conducted the housing inventory count along with the point in time count this year. So I just wanted to make a point of clarification that the inventory is intended to be a part of the entire continuum of care. So CMIS funded, or CMS participating and non-CMIS participating. So if there are projects that exist out in the community that we are not aware of, please let us know, because we want that included, because that, when you're applying for funding, we want to know how many housing projects already exist, how many are being utilized, all that kind of stuff. So please let us know. Thanks.
Awesome. Another question.
Thank you, Barry. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Julie, for your time and your effort for placing that welcome mat on a block on the right of way, and all your efforts that you and your crew have put forth.
One more thing that we're going to be doing in the next couple of weeks is we are creating a roundtable for service providers so that we can discuss the Regional Homeless Authority. I'm a firm believer, and this is my personal belief, that if this doesn't work, we're going to be in this situation forever. And I know that providers are feeling like their voices aren't heard very well yet. So we will be creating that roundtable with some recommendations and send that over to Gavin and his crew and the elected officials. So be watching for that on the Homeless Coalition, the dates and times of that roundtable.
Thank you so much. Again, round of applause for Julie. Thank you very much. And a great transition for Gavin to come on up. Oh man, flip-flop. Today's a flip-flop day. Thank you so much, Gavin, for taking the time. I imagine those flip-flops are well-deserved after these past 90 days. And you just kick back. No, but can you, so last week, correct, we had that event, Spokane Unite had put forward just to kind of discuss the end of the 90 days, and just wanted to kind of hear a generalized overview of what happened the past 90 days, but then also what's next.
Great, thank you, Robert. We handed off last week. It all began with the jurisdictions coming together about 110 days ago to talk about what it would look like if we all came together and worked together on this, all the systems, all the jurisdictions, etc. And we spent 90 days having a whole lot of conversations around the community with providers, people with lived experience right here and all around the community, and came back with a series of recommendations. And that's Spokane Unite, and it's 3 volunteers. It's myself and 2 people I worked with for a long time, Teresa Sanders, who was a city administrator for 8 years, and Rick Romero, who I worked with for about 15 years at the city also. He ran utilities and kind of a brilliant systems thinker. But we pulled together as best we could a series of recommendations based kind of what Julie alluded to, that a lot of this is about systems and how we create systems to work together within a community. And that is kind of a technical process. So last Wednesday, we handed off to the jurisdictions because after 90 days, we were tasked to come back with recommendations on how this would occur. So normally, you would put together a report, you would hand off a report, and jurisdictions would accept that, but after nearly 20 years in government, I know where reports go. They go on a back shelf and you never talk about them again. So we drafted up, we were working with 6 attorneys that we worked with historically in the city and the county and other efforts. Drafted up an enabling resolution at the county level. We drafted an interlocal agreement, and we drafted a charter that would be used by the jurisdictions to put into place a public development authority to carry out a collaborative regional response to homelessness in our community. It's pretty detailed, and it's, if anybody's interested in any of these details, they're on our website, SpokaneUnite.org, SpokaneUnite.org. There are those materials and a lot more. As of last Wednesday, it's in the hands of the jurisdictions. It's with the city of Spokane, it's with Spokane County, and it's with the city of Spokane Valley. And so we've handed that off, and we've asked that they come back within 60 days, because as Julian, as we've heard here, winter is coming again, and another year is coming. We would like to have this regional authority established, stood up and running by January 1st, which is the calendar year. The city operates on a calendar year. We also have state and federal governments on that. Fiscal years, but it would align with the budget process of the city and the county and the valley if they choose to participate directly. And so there's a lot to do, but one of the great advantages right now is there's a great, we all know it, the public input process with the city and the county. So you've got on Tuesdays, you've got the meetings at the county, on Monday nights, you've got the meetings at the city, and what we handed off is anything but perfect. It's a best efforts basis in a very short period of time to put together the best product we could put together. And there are a lot of flaws. Some of them have already raised alarm in the community because of, I think, in many cases, our poor use of language. And some of them are just the art of compromise. When you're in a room with people and they all have differing viewpoints, it's just back to how does collaboration happen. So on the Board of Governance, that's a hot topic right now. Who governs this thing? So there's a general belief among the people I worked with that 13 was the maximum you would have on an effective board. And we can all imagine, we're sitting in a room, we're trying to make technical decisions. Once it gets past about 13, it gets a little bit unwieldy and messy. I'm not so sure. I heard from other people that run large organizations, and they've run larger boards. So there's no right answer to that. But for instance, one of the things that has come up is people feel there are not enough representation from the provider community. And the reason for not having providers on that board is there's an implicit conflict of interest because funds will be distributed through this organization. But it's fundamentally a provider organization. So you can argue that point. And I think there's justification on both sides. So go to the city, go to the county during these next 60 days, and if you think a provider should be on that board, get that out there. That's a valid conversation. And again, just because we said there wasn't going to be, that's not necessarily the right answer. There's another concern, not enough lived experience. So we have one member of lived experience. And when you have a 13-member board, we knew we had to have 5 from the jurisdictions. And the reason we needed people from the jurisdictions is we needed political representation because these are government dollars and they have a fiduciary responsibility for those dollars. So we had 2 members from the city, they're a strong mayor form of government, one from the administration side, one from the council side, one from the county board of commissioners, and one from the valley, and then one from the small jurisdictions. We have, I think, 9 municipalities, Small Airway Heights, Bellwood, the rest of them. So we had those 5. The other 8 are not elected members, and I don't think I've ever seen that on any board in the community that's associated with the jurisdictions where the non-elected outnumber 8-5 the elected. And those are appointed by the entire board. So it's not, a lot of our boards like the Public Facilities District, STA, these appointments all come down from the electeds. In this case, these appointments come from the board itself. So it's fundamentally trying to deliver on a promise not to be political, not to politicize this issue of homelessness response. So somebody might come back and say, I don't think one lived experience is enough. And so they say, okay, then how about 2, or how about 3? Then you're just pushing that number up on the total number of board members, which again, you may have an opinion that 16 or 17 board members is not too many. In which case, that's a valid argument. Come back and say, we need a provider on that group. The other members, public housing and private housing, those are 2 of them. You know, homelessness is largely a housing problem. It's hard for me to imagine not having public and private housing. Arielle was here from the Spokane Housing Authority, that's public. We would reach out to them for leadership on that side. Likewise, we need private housing developers. We need, the medical community represented. We need safety represented. We need philanthropy represented. We need business represented. So, we want to bring more dollars in. So having somebody from the business community that can wrestle with the rest of the business community and make sure that they're involved with this in a productive way and bring dollars into the system. Likewise, philanthropy. Likewise, we want to make sure that we're reaching out to government.
So is that all included in what was sent to the electeds?
It's all there.
Yeah.
Governance is there. It's all in play now.
And is that information on the Spokane Unite?
Yes.
So if individuals wanted to send in, recommendations, my approach is, I don't know if any of you have seen Horton Hears a Who, but the more, little who's that unite together to show how we are here, the better response you'll have. Is there a way for this community, do they go to city council to present these? Hey, we've read through this charter and these are the recommendations. What's the best way for service providers to engage in that process?
I think I sat through 18 years of Monday night city council meetings. They can be really long and off point, and you can be waiting and waiting. I think sending in emails is frequently very effective. They read their emails. The council members are incredibly diligent about this. I've always noted that. It's a full-time plus job. So email, if you want to show up and have, speak directly, do that also. It gets out on Channel 5 so others hear it, and that's important. But yeah, the next 60 days are absolutely critical. Here's my huge fear is, it's that idea of letting perfection get in the way of good. This is far from perfect, but as Julie said, I believe also this is our last best chance for a long time. And do we need to take advantage of this opportunity? Spokane is in the top 10 per capita homelessness rates in America. We're in a terrible place right now. And then we say, well, how are we comparing with others? Tacoma is 15% lower rate. So for every 10 homeless individuals we have in Spokane, they have 5. Boise, next door in Idaho, is 70% lower than we are, which is mind-bending. And then if you go to Houston, which we've modeled after, which is actually, although a much larger community, but purplish like we are in their politics, they're 89% lower. So for every 10 individuals we have experiencing homelessness in Spokane, they have 1. And if you really press them on what they did to make this happen, if you really, because everybody wants to know what's the secret sauce. There's been all these articles, all these visits to Houston, everybody's trying to replicate it. It's like everybody's trying to replicate Gonzaga basketball. How did you do that? And when we talk to Anise Parker, the 3-term mayor down there, or you talk to Sylvester Turner, the current mayor, they both insist it's not about anything we specifically did. We found a way, as Julie Garcia said earlier, to collaborate. And that is the hardest thing. And this is what's worrying me right now, because the initial response from last week has been kind of stunning. My biggest fear is that one party or the other is going to embrace this, but not both. So the R's are gonna replace it, or embrace it, and the D's won't, because that's kind of the response nowadays. Or the D's will, and the R's won't. But this is certainly true, that if one or the other, but not both, embrace this concept, it will absolutely fail. I mean, we may get it stood up by January 1 on schedule and do the things we need to do, but if one half of our community, or something resembling one half, is not embracing it, if one half of our leadership isn't embracing it, say the R's embrace it, well, we've lost, and the D's don't, we've lost the state. And if we lose the state, where we have remarkable leadership, with Andy Billig on down, we have a powerful legislative delegation in Olympia right now. It's the best we've seen in many, many years. If we lose that, we leave tens of millions of dollars annually on the table. These are monies we need. If we split off from our federal delegation, we have incredible power in the Senate, we also have in the House. If we somehow alienate ourselves on the federal side, we can't succeed. So it's gotta be a both and. This is not an either or moment, but I've seen this reaction already. You know, like one of the questions was, they were asked to be a homelessness, they wanted to see a homelessness response. And then we come out last Wednesday and we say we're homelessness, housing, health, and safety. And that really has got a lot of people about like, wow, this is a big power grab. And all we did was recognize you can't address homelessness without also addressing housing, and without also addressing health, and without also addressing safety. And when we talk about safety, for instance, we're not just talking about public safety, but we are, how the police respond, how the fire department responds, but also the safety of individuals experiencing homelessness, how we all experience a sense of safety. So this power grab, like I heard on a council meeting, like, what are they gonna try to influence housing policy? You know, I thought they were engaged in homelessness. And heck yes, we're gonna engage housing policy. At every turn, we've got a huge housing problem in Spokane. If we can't address that, if we can't jump in and have, I think there was one comment that was astonished that we would think we could influence zoning or land use planning. We will absolutely be trying to influence zoning and land use planning.
I think one of the ones that I've come across since last Wednesday, for service providers, one of the principles that was brought up as far as detention, right? It sounds like, I think it said necessary tool or some I can't remember how that principle was phrased, but it was alarming or off-putting, concerning on the term used. It sounds like high school. Not that I know anything about detention, but it sounds like I was a good guy. Mama's boy. No, but yeah. Can you explain kind of the intentionality behind that principle that was listed regarding detention?
And that was one of the areas where I think our language was very lacking. It sent a really bad message, and it was just clumsy. But are we engaging with the detention conversation? Right now, there's a 2/10 proposal for a jail expansion. 2/10, which runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars in our community. Hundreds of millions of dollars that we want to throw directly at old school, incarceration concepts. So we're immediately engaging and saying, well, what if the 2/10, because we do have a very old jail facility, what if the 2/10 was only 1/10? What if the other 10th was instead HB 1590 funding for housing and mental health? And we're already getting traction on that conversation with the county. They're the ones who are kind of putting that out there. And what if the other 1/10 wasn't so much about, classic incarceration, but alternatives to incarceration? What if we looked at it much differently? The kind of drywall holding facility. And what if that holding facility was in the kind of navigation center that Julie talked about earlier, where they're not going to your typical jail, they're not going up to our complex off of Broadway, but instead going to a navigation center that looks like the Beacon in Houston. And the Beacon in Houston is this one-stop shop in the middle of downtown Houston, and it's a really nice facility. You go in there, and the first thing that happens when you walk in is you exchange your clothing for kind of a hospital outfit, and immediately there's this team working on doing laundry. And you drop your cell phone into this little container, and it gets charged. You go and you have a meal, a really good meal. I had 3 meals there while I was there. And while you're having that meal, you're having good coffee, and you're meeting with people who are, navigating, they're putting you in touch with all the services. So this organization or this facility has to be in touch with this immense web, this amazing web of providers in our community. And that's the funny thing, we keep wanting to point, or some people, but they point fingers. They're like, hey, if we're in the top 10 worst performing in the nation, then who's at fault for this? And it's not at fault, it's about the coordination. We have one of the great systems anywhere. We've got more than enough capacity and the right people involved in this to totally succeed. What we don't have is coordination between them. And that's why we need a facility that would accomplish that. But back to that question about the language, it was just bad language. Get down and reword that. It's in your hands now. It's in the public process for 60 days. Reword that principle. We didn't do a great job of it.
Yeah, and it sounds like whatever leadership board is formulated would carry on those conversations of what's developed later down. It's not like, oh, Gavin Cooley, he's taking charge on this. It's more of that whoever's selected. And again, how does that, in the charter that was presented, how does that selection process work for those selected board members?
Initially, it's occurring organically, just like here. I mean, when you heard Arielle talking earlier about the Spokane Housing Authority, of course, one of the many conversations we had was to go to the Spokane Housing Authority and meet with Pam Parr and talk about what they're doing there. And in that conversation saying, it seems natural, Pam, that you would be the representation on the public housing. And so we would hope to have it on that level rather than on the political level. So when we come out before year end, it's pre-selected through conversations like that. And then after that, it's got a life of its own because then the board creates their own.
And then lastly, before we get to open Q&A, why are you doing this? Why Gavin Cooley? Why have you stepped into this position the past 90 days? Just a little bit about you as a person, right? Like what drove you to just wake up one day and Q-tip in ear and was like, oh, I'm gonna take this on. How did you, just give us your why.
Yeah, thank you. Ben Stucker and Frank Svoboda from Corner Booth Media asked me to host a series. It's called Housing and Help. You can find housingandhelp.org. And just asked me to host it because I had recently retired from the city after 18 years as a CFO. And I've got to admit, I was really uncomfortable with that process. One of our early ones was out at Camp Hope with Julie and Maurice and others, and they made it really easy for me. But I got to admit, where I really got comfortable was when we went to Houston and we're meeting with that 3-term mayor and the current mayor down there, and Mark Eichenbaum, who runs it, Mandy Chapman-Semple, who was the architect for the system back down there back in 2012. She was a long-term provider that really is the hidden mind behind all of it. And we hired her throughout this process. She visited Spokane for a week, and talking to her for a couple hours just the other day, where she's still guiding this process very much. But when I was down there, it suddenly just made sense to me, like, wow, we could be the city that other cities are coming to see how to respond to homelessness. We could be that model city. And it's only because I've worked in these systems, as Julie says, it's about systems. It's about how people come together. It's about how they collaborate. That we can do this here in Spokane. We have the right people. We have the right size community. I mean, when you look at weird things like Hoop Fest, it only works in Spokane because we're the right size. Even things like the Lilac Parade, it's a weird sized community that can accomplish really big things because we can kind of gather like in situations like this. This doesn't happen in Seattle. It's tough, and I don't mean to put down Seattle or any large city, but we're kind of a Goldilocks size to do certain amazing things. I think this could be one of them. So that was the main driver. When I came home, I thought, wow, we don't just need to talk about this, we can actually accomplish this. But it's pretty natural that somebody within the system, somebody that's been in the system, needs to begin that process. And I've heard comments like, Gavin has been co-opted, was a direct quote. And I'm like, no, I'm just doing what I've always done in the city. It's not much different. And of course, I'm not anything resembling an expert on homelessness or homelessness policy. There's a ton of those right in this audience. But I do know how to talk to people, bring system together, create collaboration. And I'll just mention, when there's collaboration, when people work together, that resources, and I keep saying this, because as a city CFO for 18 years, that's never the problem, because I know a lot of you might feel that we don't have enough money to address this massive problem. We have more than enough money, but what we don't have, absolutely positively, is collaboration. So when we start shooting holes in this thing, you're gonna see it. This is the biggest change initiative that the city has undergone in my experience. Way bigger than the smaller examples I give of where the city has said we need a single purpose organization to do something, like the public facilities or emergency response or STA even, which is a pretty big one. But this is a big letting go, and I'm already seeing the reaction to that. Like, why do they need all the money? Why are they setting such a big goal, like 40% reduction in the annual point in time count within 2 years? And the reason we set that goal is the current year increase. The country is flat this year, flat. In Spokane, it's up 36%. We're on the wrong side of everything right now. And if we can't reverse a 1 year increase in 2 years of operation, why are we even showing up? So that's why there's a 40%. But then almost in the same breath, I hear people say, and it's kind of a power grab. They're trying to grab all our money and we're in a budget deficit. I'm like, well, as a city CFO for 18 years, these are homelessness dollars that we're trying to bring into the new organization. They're dedicated to the homelessness response. They're not going to help you with your budget problem at the city in the general fund. These are separate buckets of money. So your real question is, if we don't put it into the new organization, how's it going to get spent? It's going to get spent by the same apparatus that has put us in the top 10 homelessness rates in the nation. So your real choice is, do you want it in a new organization that's been designed as a single purpose organization to address this human tragedy, or do you want it buried among 50 or so departments of the city and another 40 departments of the county, where it's kind of the poor stepchild in the back room somewhere, and it's not the fault of the city or county at all. I mean, imagine running the city. You got utilities, you got public safety, you got parks, you got libraries, you got streets, and then you got homelessness. And you got a small number of individuals trying to coordinate all that. We're just saying, get it out of there. It's not designed to do this kind of human services, and get it into a single purpose organization where it can succeed.
Dan Simpson had a question. First of all, a comment actually. This morning in the Wall Street Journal, and I put this article up on Shelter Spokane at Substack.com, they had a great in-depth article on what's happening in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is facing the same problems, increasing in homeless. And what they're doing now, first of all, they have a new mayor who is addressing it, not with sweeps, but the same thing that was done for Camp Hope. So it's a very good article that you can use, and here's the key to it, is Los Angeles City is trying to get together with Los Angeles County. Same kinds of issues, the funding and so on. And so I think the article would provide perhaps a roadmap for us, or at least showing some of the problems. Otherwise, thank you so much, Gavin. I saw you at Freedom and Arboretum, and you're just doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. I'll read that.
You only get two, but you only get one, and you get two today.
Question. So, in this regional homeless entity, is there, like we have in the COC, a 5-year plan to to solve homelessness? Is there going to be a common goal that all service providers, all of this board is working towards? Or is it just whatever they see fit at the time?
Yeah, there'll absolutely be a 5-year plan. I mean, at the city, of course you fall back on what you know. I had a 10-year forecast at all times that was a spreadsheet that would make your head spin. And right now we've got different 5-year plans with different time frames and everybody marching to their own beat, and people don't adhere to it.
Yep.
Everybody's doing something different. And so yeah, we would have exactly that. And you would all be a part of that. I mean, the provider community is gonna have, that's where the expertise is, and that's where it would come from.
Robert said we have time for just one more question, and this is the lady who I saw first.
Hello. So I'm just curious, there's something in the back of my brain that's not coming. We have an Envision Center.
We have what?
An Envision Center that came to Spokane in 2019. I can walk into the building, still go into that Envision Center, Resource Center, and there's someone there a couple days a week with phones being offered. What is going to bring the resources together to keep them glued? How is that going to happen? Because I feel we're almost kind of reinventing the wheel a little bit. We have that resource center. It's available. It's empty. How is your program going to fill that spot?
That's a really great question. And I have the same thoughts and I have, concerns about that Envision Center. I know the planning was grandiose and it was about bringing the same things together, so your sense of deja vu is spot on. And this one has to be, it is the #1 issue in Spokane, and the energy behind it and the resources behind it have to drive it forward. So you have to have leadership and you have to have a spotlight on it. The resources will be remarkably different. So if we got, the county to enact HB 1590, which that's what we're talking about, because you're gonna get the right people and you're gonna be pushing that political process. That's $15 million a year. Before I left the city, we have a bunch of reserves in the city, about $500 million, kind of set aside for water, sewer, garbage, for most of them, but they're throughout the city. We have an internal lending facility called the Spokane Internal Lending Pool. But basically that $15 million a year coming in under HB 1590, which isn't even in place yet at the county, could be turned into about $120 million tomorrow. It would take a couple weeks. But it literally could. And with the right planning and the right community planning, a sense of what that housing should look like and where it should occur, you could do so many things so rapidly. And we're under the gun right now. The AARP and other one-time funding coming through Commerce and some of the things that Julie was able to avail herself of, and Maurice and others at Camp Hope, if we don't replace that, because that one-time funding is going away, but there's another bunch coming down through the feds, and there'll be other opportunities, but we're gonna have to have an ability to get after it and stay after it and not let what happened. I couldn't agree more. The Envision Center is a real disappointment on many levels. The idea behind it sounded great. So we can't let what happens be less than the enthusiasm we're bringing to it now. We're all gonna have to stay with it, and keep an eye on it and make sure it's not gonna be, as Robert said, it's not gonna be Gavin, Rick Romero, and Teresa Sanders. It's gonna be all of us owning that thing.
Well, thank you so much. I know there's a lot of questions. I imagine you'll be around afterwards, if anyone has any questions for you directly. But yes, I would also encourage you to stay tuned for that email to come out on the Google Serve with Julie's meeting. I think that will be a great opportunity for service providers and outreach workers to set forth recommendations to Spokane Unite before this. When is the 60 days? Is there a specific date on the 60 days?
We'd like to see it at the end of August. There's so much work to do to move people, to move dollars, to assume contracts, all those, you can't imagine the work setting up an organization like this, because we're really asking the city and the county to more or less get out of the business of homelessness. So So all those programs, including data, CMIS, all that, OHMS, over to the organization.
So in the meantime, look out for that email for that meeting, but go to SpokaneUnite.org, read the charter, go through it, see what questions you have, come prepared to that meeting, because we probably won't go over the charter unless it's specifically detailed towards recommendations. So come prepared on that meeting. Any last comments?
Well, on that website, you can turn in questions there. If any of you need a quick question answered, if you're at a meeting and you have a concern, or you're going to hear so much pushback now, and like any change initiative, that's what you hear. You know, even in my home, which is a big family, if somebody suddenly suggests some departure from the tried and true ways, the world blows up. There's going to be a lot of world blowing up on this issue, and we've got to kind of stay steady this time. Don't go on innuendo, don't go on conspiracy theories, etc. Make a call. Call me. If you need me to show up at a meeting, my phone number is 509-995-3376. I'd be happy to go to any meeting, any coffee, anything, to answer questions or hear input, because as you're hearing, we don't have all the answers, but we can help funnel these ideas through.
Well, thank you for your time.
I would mention one more. The other person I found tireless is Nicolette Ocktree. She's advocating. She's expanded our outreach and our work in so many remarkable ways. So, and I think has 10 times more energy than I do. So if you're not getting through to me, call her.
Well, perfect. We'll have a good rest of July. Thank you so much for staying a little bit extra over today. A lot of good information. We'll see you next month.